Good morning and welcome in joining with us in walking in the footsteps of the Anzacs. In this extraordinary year, we recognise 75 years since the conclusion of World War II. Almost 1 million Australians served in the Second World War in theatres including Germany and Italy and Europe, the Mediterranean and North Africa, as well as against Japan in Southeast Asia and other areas of the Pacific Ocean. Australian towns were bombed and submarines attacked Sydney Harbour. On May 7, 1945, upon surrender of the German High Command, the war in Europe was over. On August 14, Japan accepted the Allied demand for unconditional surrender, bringing to an end a deadly, abhorrent conflict that consumed the globe. After almost 6 years of bloodshed, a total of 39,000 Australians had died. Today, we are privileged to still have in our company a number of incredible Australians who participated in the Second World War. Jessie Flanders was born in 1922 on her parents' farm in Western Victoria. When she moved to Melbourne with her sister, they both took work in clerical roles for the Shell Company. Upon joining the Royal Australian Navy in 1941, Jessie was posted to Monterey in Queen's Road, St Kilda, which served as an outpost of Bletchley Park, a secret communications code-breaking organisation. By intercepting and breaking the code of Japanese wartime communications, Jessie was part of a team that saved many Allied lives and provided critical intelligence that assisted in the ability of the Allied forces to defend Australia. Never allowed to talk about her role in the war, Jessie didn't receive recognition until many decades later when presented with a pin by British Prime Minister David Cameron, thanking her for her vital work. After the war, Jessie returned to the farm and married a former fighter pilot, Bob Patterson, with whom she had 3 children. Upon Bob's passing in 1975, Jessie moved to Casterton, where she married John Flanders. John passed away in 2000. Jessie still lives in Casterton, is an avid member of the Casterton RSL sub-branch, and has a strong involvement at the Australian Kelpie Centre over many years. Alan Moore was born in 1920 and grew up in Camberwell in Melbourne's inner east. He attended Camberwell Grammar and Melbourne Grammar and joined the Melbourne Grammar Cadets and achieved the rank of Lieutenant. When the war started, Alan wanted to join the Australian Imperial Force. However, he was still under 21 and his parents would not sign permission. He sat for the first appointment qualification and was appointed as a lieutenant in the 14th Militia Battalion in 1939. In 1940, the militia called for volunteers for tropical service and Alan was selected and joined the famous 39th Battalion and sailed for Papua New Guinea. Serving in both B and D Company, 39th, during the Kokoda and Sanananda campaign, Alan transferred to the 2nd 6th Battalion AIF on the disbanding of the 39th Battalion and fought in the Wewak campaign. Alan discharged with the rank of captain in December 1945. Alan married a young widow, Joan Fawcett, and they moved to Mount Eliza, where they had 2 daughters. Alan worked for Heinz as manager of their baby food division until retirement in 1980. Alan was Commodore of the Canadian Bay Sailing Club for a number of years and had a keen interest in Rotary and Probus. A member of the Mornington RSL sub-branch, Alan will celebrate his 100th birthday in November this year. John Bell, known as Jack to his mates, was born on the 20th December 1917 to parents Bert and Carrie Bell in Toowong, an inner suburb of Brisbane. Jack attended Toowong State School and later Brisbane Boys College, where he passed his junior public certificate. After finishing school, Jack started work at D&W Murray Limited, a men's and boys' clothing warehouse on Elizabeth Street in Brisbane. After joining the militia at age 18 and becoming a member of the Royal Australian Artillery, Jack later enlisted in the Royal Australian Air Force in May 1940. After undertaking training as a wireless operator air gunner, Jack embarked for Egypt, arriving in March 1941. He joined No. 216 Squadron, Royal Air Force, in August 1941. On 23 January 1942, Jack was shot down in Libya. His best friend, Tony Carter, was killed in the crash, and Jack was severely wounded. He credits his survival to the skills of those who operated on him in the German field hospital in Antalat. Jack spent 5 months in hospitals in Libya and Italy. During his time as a prisoner of war, Jack was transferred to a number of different camps, including PG-57 near Udine in northern Italy and Stalag 4B northeast of Mollberg in Germany. Thinking about his time as a POW, Jack remembers lack of food as a huge issue. His diet consisted of pickled vegetables, horse meat, sauerkraut, millet, sugar beets and bread made from the bruised rye beet fibre, sawdust or wood flour, and edible grasses and leaves. Jack remembers eating his first piece of white bread when he was liberated, and he remembers it tasted like cake. Just beautiful. Following his liberation, Jack returned to England in May 1945, where he had a whale of a time spending his back pay with his mates. Returning to civilian life in Australia, Jack and his wife Dolores had one daughter, Sandy, and have 3 granddaughters. Jack's early working life served him well, returning to work in the textiles industry until his retirement. Jack is a member of the Camberwell RSL sub-branch and the Ex-Prisoners of War and Relatives Association, the Oddbods UK Association, and the Air Force Association. Jack is 102. The Australian Anzac Centre of Gravity is the Shrine of Remembrance, where the flame of freedom burns. May we keep faith with the Anzac spirit by example, and for the generations to come, let silent contemplation be your offering.
Good morning. Welcome to the RSL Victoria Dawn Service 2020. This Anzac Day will be like no other Anzac Day, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't take the time to show our respect to all veterans and their families who give so much and ask for so little. Due to the coronavirus, a large part of our dawn service has been pre-recorded to ensure that we have complied with the restrictions and distancing criteria set out by the state government. Where this has not been possible, the RSL has applied for an exemption. You may also note that some of the service will be slightly different for that reason. The service will soon commence with the arrival of Her Excellency, the Honourable Linda Dessau, Governor of Victoria. The Shrine Guard will now take post. Her Excellency, the Honourable Linda Dessau, Governor of Victoria, will now enter the sanctuary. Dr. Robert Webster, OAM, State President of RSL Victoria, will now recite the Anzac Requiem.
On this day, above all days, we recall those who served in war and who did not return to receive the grateful thanks of the nation. We remember those who still sleep where they were left, amid the holly scrub in the valleys and on the ridges of Gallipoli, on the rocky and terraced hills of Palestine, and in the lovely cemeteries in France. We remember those who lie asleep in ground beneath the shimmering haze of the Libyan desert, at Bardia, Derna, Tobruk, and amid the mountain passes and olive groves of Greece and Crete, and the rugged snow-capped hills of Lebanon and Syria. We remember those who lie buried in the jungles of Malaya and Burma, in New Guinea, and in the distant isles of the Pacific. We remember those who lie in unknown resting places in almost every land, and those gallant sailors whose grave is the unending sea. Especially do we remember those who died as prisoners of war, remote from their homeland and from the comforting presence of their kith and kin. We think of the sacrifice and service of the women who gave their lives in our own and foreign lands and at sea in 2 world wars. We recall too the staunch friends who fought beside us on the first Anzac Day, men of New Zealand who helped create the name of Anzac, and all the New Zealanders who have served alongside us since. We recall all those who gave their lives in the merchant services and in British, Commonwealth and Allied forces. We think of every man and woman who in those crucial hours died so that the lights of freedom and humanity might continue to shine. We think of those gallant men and women who died in Korea, Malaya, Borneo, Vietnam, Timor, Iraq and Afghanistan, and in peacekeeping and peace-enforcing commitments to defend our freedom and preserve peace and security. May they rest proudly in the knowledge of their achievements, and may we and our successors in that heritage prove worthy of their sacrifice.
The Governor will now lay a wreath on behalf of all Victorians. Dr. Webster will now read verses 3 and 4 of Lawrence Binion's ode, For the Fallen.
They went with songs to the battle. They were young, straight of limb, true of eye, steady and aglow. They were staunch to the end against odds uncounted. They fell with their faces to the foe. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. lest we forget.
The national anthems of New Zealand and Australia will now be performed by leading seaman Tracy Kennedy.
E hoa atua on ya iwi matora ata whakaronga e aroha noa ki ahua ko te pai ki a tautoa ta whai mana a kiti a mai e a te aroa. God of nations, at thy feet in the bonds of love we meet. Hear our voices, we entreat. God, defend our free land. God, Pacific's triple star, from the shafts of strife and war, make her praises heard afar. God, defend New Zealand. Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are young and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is good by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains and let us sing, advance Australia fair. Beneath our radiant Southern Cross, we'll toil with hearts and hands to make this commonwealth of ours renowned of all the lands. For those who've come across the seas, we've boundless plains to share. With courage let us all combine to advance Australia fair. In joyful strains and let us sing, advance, Australia fair.
This brings us to the conclusion of this morning's ceremonial component at the Shrine of Remembrance. Shrine Guard, dismount.
Shrine Guard, main bar, time.
The Governor will now depart by the south door. The Governor will now make her Anzac Day address, which was pre-recorded at Government House.
I start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land upon which I'm standing and by paying my respects to their elders past and present. As Australians, we understand why the 25th of April is a special day for our nation. On this day, 105 years ago, just after 4 a.m, the first waves of Australian soldiers fought their way ashore on the Gallipoli Peninsula. By the end of that terrible day, 2,000 had been killed or wounded, the first of more than 26,000 Australian casualties of the Gallipoli campaign. The extraordinary endurance of the Anzacs became an indelible part of our national story. Each year we honour the sacrifices made on our behalf then and since by all those who have served our country in defence and peacekeeping duties. We gather at the Shrine of Remembrance or at local memorials in towns and cities right across our state to stand in silence in the darkness before the dawn, sometimes shivering in the chill, sometimes in the rain, amongst friends and amongst strangers too. This year, of course, is different. For the first time in living memory, we're unable to come together for services at dawn, or for parades or marches, or for any of the traditions that usually mark this day. I know this will be a source of sadness for many. As the Governor of Victoria, it's my privilege to meet veterans and serving members of the Australian Defence Force and to hear their remarkable stories. I know that the changed arrangements this year will be difficult for them and for their families and for others for whom this day has a very personal significance. Indeed, for all of us, there is an added poignancy to this year's commemorations. We cannot gather together as we usually would, but perhaps we can reflect in a new way on why Anzac Day still unites us so profoundly. We can reflect that although the men who fought at Gallipoli, the nurses who cared for the wounded, and those who toiled at home to support the effort were from a time now distant to us, we are still bound to them, bound across the generations, across the diversity of our backgrounds, cultures and religions, and across the challenges of different times. The qualities those young Australians discovered in themselves at Gallipoli are as precious to us today as they ever were. Courage in the face of fear, holding together, loyalty, and digging in with grit and perseverance, no matter how hard things get. Recent events have certainly shown us that these values endure. We saw the vital role and the selfless service of our Australian Defence Force during the awful bushfires of the summer. And now, in the midst of this current public health crisis, we're seeing the ADF step up again to help in transport and logistics, manufacturing, and support for the health workers, police, and emergency services who are working so hard to keep us safe. On this Anzac Day, amidst the anxiety and uncertainty that we're feeling, I want to thank our servicemen and our servicewomen for modelling the same values of resilience, courage and adaptability that those before them showed at Gallipoli and have shown across the decades since. We can all draw inspiration from their example as each one of us plays our own part in the effort to control the spread of the COVID-19 virus, to care for those affected and to plan for the brighter future that we know will come. This year on Anzac Day, we will be physically apart. And although we yearn to be together again, to gather at dawn, to collect at memorials and cenotaphs, to march and to cheer those marching, and for some of us to see old comrades and to talk fondly of others, we will still be joined whether alone or with families or housemates, joined whether inside our homes or lighting up the dawn with a candle or a torch. Whether we stand in silence at farm gates, in our driveways, or on our doorsteps, balconies or verandas, joined in our shared resolve on this as on every 25th of April to remember what others have given for us. Although this year we remember differently, it remains as true as ever to say, we will remember them.
Two veterans representing service across generations laid wreaths at the shrine in advance of Anzac Day on behalf of all Australian Defence personnel. Major General Andrew Bottrell, Conspicuous Service Cross and Bar Distinguished Service Medal, graduated RMC 1987 and was posted to Corps of Transport. He has held numerous positions in logistics and has served in East Timor, Iraq and Afghanistan, as well as Commander Joint Task Operations Sovereign Borders in 2015. Major General Bottrell is the Senior Defence Officer for Victoria. Daniel Costello, WO2, enlisted in the Army in 1991 as a combat engineer. He did 2 tours of Afghanistan in 2007, 2009 as an explosive ordnance disposal technician and was awarded a commendation for distinguished service in 2009. The Melbourne Symphony Orchestra Chorus would normally provide musical support for the dawn service. This year, they join you from their homes, singing "Be Still, My Soul."
Be still, my soul, the Lord is on your side. The patient hear the cross of grief and pain. Lift to your cause, daughter and light. In every change, ye faithful will remain. Be still, my soul, your best heavenly friend. Through thorny ways leads to a joyful end. Be still, my soul, and dearest friends depart, and all is darkened in the veil of tears. Then you shall rest on His lovely heart, who comes to soothe your sorrow, calm your fears. Be still, my soul, Jesus can restore. But trust and hope has strengthened you before. Be still, my soul, the hour is hasting on, when we shall be forever with the Lord. When disappointment, grief, and fear are gone, sorrow forgotten, love's pure joy restored. Be still, my soul, when change and tears are past. Oh, safe and blessed, we shall meet at last.
When a veteran walks in the door, they are often struggling and at a low point in their life. By supporting the Anzac Appeal, you give them the opportunity to turn their lives around. As a veteran, I had that opportunity, and now I assist others to do the same. I encourage you to donate at anzacappeal.com.au. Thank you.
this concludes the Dawn Service for 2020. We thank you for your attention and respect for our veterans.